Hey guys, welcome back from the break. We're going to continue with the aftermath of the second Chechnya war, and actually talking about the aftermath of the war has a lot to do with talking about terrorism. We already talked about the demographics of Chechnya, and obviously from 2000, it was a part of the Russian Federation. Actually, the Kremlin putting decided on one of the warlords, actually Kadyrov, to be the president of Chechnya, and he will follow whatever the Kremlin will tell him to. However, obviously, this will create tension with separatists, and these separatists will actually, the tactics they will use will be terrorist attacks. For example, the one in 2002 in Moscow, in a theater in Moscow, where they took hostages, and over 90 people died in that attack, 90 of the hostages, 40 of the Chechnyan attackers as well. For example, we know that also President Kadyrov was actually killed by a separatist bomb attack in 2004 in the stadium in Grozny, and actually his son, Kadyrov Jr., succeeded him, and he's still ruling in Chechnya. Or the Beslan school siege in 2004 that you might actually not remember, but over 350 people died in that attack when the Chechnyan separatists took hostages once again, and they blasted bombs when actually with medical teams were accessing the compound to help those wounded. Or, for example, the Moscow metro attack in 2010, where 40 people died in two bombs that blasted into Moscow subway. So actually, as you can see, terrorism is not something that Russia does not know about. It's something that Russia is also suffer. To this respect, Russia has been conducting a counterterrorism operation in Chechnya since 2000. Actually, that operation was finished in 2009, even though the attacks continued. However, that had to do also with the relation with Ramzan Kadyrov, who's the president of Chechnya, and Vladimir Putin, and the understandings they reached. The current relation actually, is still good by the end of the day, but there have been some tensions between both leaders. Actually, Chechnya has even had tougher. Actually, it made the news not that long ago because they have even a tougher policy regarding homosexuality than Russia does, and actually that even created some friction, and also, well, certain policies that Kadyrov was implementing and Putin was not really happy about. Let's remember also, I haven't mentioned this, but by the end of the day, Chechnya has oil, and that makes it a relevant region for Russia, for sure. And well, we're going to move on from, and we're going to relate this to terrorism, even though we've already done, and how the aftermath of the war is an aftermath of terrorism that Russia suffered. But let's read this for a second. This year, I lost too many of my loved relatives. I wasn't able to cope with the stress and maintain schoolwork. My relatives live in Chechnya, Russia, a republic that is occupied by Russian soldiers that falsely accuse and abduct innocent men under false pretenses and terrorist accusation. This was written by I cannot pronounce the name, Dolskar Tsarnaev. And actually, he is sadly well known in the United States because he was one of the two responsibles of the terrorist attacks in the Boston Marathon in 2013. And actually, he is originally from Chechnya. And you see how, by the end of the day, this speaks quite clearly about the nature of terrorism nowadays, and how transnational it is, how permeable it is to borders, and how events happening in the other end of the world can actually affect us at home, and how things are connected. So quite interesting, the relation and how the support Russia might give us there. We're going to talk about Russia once again in a second, but let's continue with war and terror. Obviously, the need for cooperation was clear from 9/11. After that, Madrid bombings, 2005 London bombings. We talked about terrorism already on different stages. Now we seem to be in a relatively quiet phase after 5 years ago. Well, this kind of terrorist alert got higher once again. But by the end of the day, cooperation is still needed. And if I ask you this question, does terrorism fall under intergovernmental supranational politics? Obviously, I hope that you have no doubt that the intergovernmental is the answer. By the end of the day, this is a very sensitive issue, and governments want have decision-making power on it. But by the end of the day, cooperation, as we were saying there in the slide, is absolutely necessary. And what channels of cooperation do we have? Actually, within the European Union, we have under Justice and Home Affairs, we have different agencies, different structures to cooperate. First one has to do with prevention, with radicalization awareness network. And actually the UK is, I mean, that's one of the debates of the UK leaving the European Union and leaving these networks that are actually highly efficient and quite necessary, and how cooperation can prevent attacks, and how sharing data on these issues can help. And actually even sharing more data will be even better. Next one, Combat Terrorism and Financing, Anti-Money Laundering Directive. And this was a piece of regulation by the end of the day that any money that we could trace back to terrorism, obviously that will be stopped, and it will not be able to go through European banks. And last but not least, the European Counterterrorism Center. By the end of the day, it's about information, operational support, coordination within police forces. By the end of the day, this is coordinated within Europol. And what we were saying before, that Russia plays a big role here, and actually Russia plays a very big role, because by the end of the day, foreign fighters, the concept of those Spanish, American, British, Russian national that goes to fight the jihad for ISIS, Al-Qaeda, whatever you want to call it, the war in Syria or in Iraq. And we know that over 5,000 Europeans have gone to Syria and Iraq. This number is even higher for Russians. And actually, this is a strategy that Vladimir Putin is following, that he prefers a problem abroad than at home. And he's actually granting and easing passports for these people to go and fight in the jihad. But by the end of the day, cooperation with Russia will be highly beneficial in these grants, and even though it's still limited, because by the end of the day, actually the problem is common also for Russia and the West. And what about the relation between the US and Europe in this sense? By the end of the day, there's cooperation, there's intel, they sharing data, but I mean, there are issues there, because data privacy, you know how in the European Union has become a very sensitive issue. Well, Patriot Act in the US kind of relaxed those requirements if there's any connection with terrorism. So there are problems there. And yeah, also some issues with national security agency surveillance. And actually, there were rumors that they were tapping Angela Merkel's phone. So obviously, those kind of things do not help the flow of information between both parties. And actually also quite interesting, the international terrorist list that is, by the end of the day, built together, led by the United States, but it does need the consensus of the European Union. So this was about it for today. I hope you enjoyed it. If there's anything that is not clear enough for tomorrow, please send me an email today or tomorrow. I will try to answer as soon as possible. Okay, so have a good one and good luck tomorrow with the pop quiz. Bye.